Hi everyone, welcome to this watercolor tutorial where we're going to paint coconut, and I'm going to show you a really cool way to make the textures on the outside of the coconuts. Here we go. I'm using my Lucas 1862 watercolors from Jerry's Artorama. This paper is cold pressed watercolor paper at 4 inches by 4 inches. I'm starting out with a pencil sketch, and the first coconut is going to be a halved coconut, and the edges are going to be slightly jagged. When you're sketching, make sure to sketch as lightly as you can so that you can easily erase the pencil lines later. If you're okay with the pencil lines showing, that's okay too. I'm using some washi tape to hold my painting down, and let's get started. The inside of the coconut is mostly white, and since we don't use white in watercolors, we actually need to paint just the shadowy areas. For the shadow area, you can use the lightest blue or the lightest green or blue-green color that you can try to get. You can just water down black. There's nothing wrong with that. But I think if you use a slightly bluish toned color, it will actually make your painting stand out more. And that's because it's going to contrast really well with the earth tones on the outside of the coconut. So for the inside of the coconut, paint just 1/2 with this very light blue color. If it feels like you're not really painting with anything, you're doing it right. And then I'm using that same really light blue color to outline the next circle outline. And again, just as lightly as I can, adding touches of color here and there, a couple lines here and there. With watercolor, less is more, and you can always add more layers later. So start with the absolute lightest layer as you can. Now that the inside of my coconut has dried, I'm just going in there with a second layer to deepen the shadow. But again, notice how I'm working with very, very light values. I'm painting the other side of the inside of the coconut just to establish that shape. And I'm using a round size 3 brush for all of this so far. All right, I'm gonna let that dry and move on to the other coconut. I'm using a burnt umber kind of color. Choose any deep dark brown color and start painting that coconut in a flat wash. If you're not sure what a flat wash is, make sure to check out my watercolor beginner exercises video series. And you want this layer to be semi-wet, not completely dry, but kind of wet. And this is the cool part to create that texture. You're actually going to use the opposite end of your brush, the handle part, and you're basically going to scrub the paper. Do you see how those lines are forming? After you do a line or two, make sure to wipe off that excess paint. And again, if you're not really seeing the texture coming through, your paper might be too wet or too dry, but just make some jagged lines coming down from that point of the coconut. Like, look at that, that is so cool. We're gonna do the same technique on the other coconut too. But before we paint the outside, let's paint just the outline. I'm using a deeper, more cool toned brown for just the edge here. And for the rest of the outside of the coconut, I'm going to use that same burnt umber color that I used earlier. And as you're painting this, make sure that it is a flat wash. I noticed that my layer was still a little bit wet, so I didn't want to scrub right away. So I'm going back to the other coconut and I'm filling in just very loosely with a slightly darker value of that brown color. Notice how I'm leaving some gaps so that you can see the original layer underneath. Okay, so now I'm gonna scrub it in. And just have fun with this. Make sure that you follow the curve of the coconut. I'm really loving this technique. It's time to deepen some of those layers. So I'm just outlining with that cool toned brown color again and just deepening that edge. I want to allow some of those brown color layers to dry. So I'm coming back to the inside of the coconut and again, just slowly adding those layers to build up value. Take it little bit at a time. Don't feel like you have to rush. Take a step back every once in a while to observe how the shadows are coming together. Make sure to leave lots of white space. Alright, I'm switching to my size 2/0 or 00 brush, and this is where you're going to add the hairy texture of the coconut. I'm using that same brown color, but in a darker value, so that means that there's not a lot of water on my brush, and I'm using my tiny brush to just very loosely paint some hairs around it. I'm focusing on the perimeter for now, but I'm also going to do it on the surface of the coconut. Try to really let yourself loose. Don't feel like you have to follow any kind of pattern or any kind of shape. I'm just wiggling my brush back and forth. I think the more loosely you do it, the more organic it's actually going to look. And now I'm doing the same on the main coconut. Again, I'm following the perimeter first. And remember to go along with the curve of the coconut. And every once in a while, just take a step back to see how it's coming together. At this point, I realized that I wanted the brown in the coconut to be a little bit warmer, so I'm glazing a very thin layer of yellow on top just to change the temperature. If you want to learn more about glazing and layering, make sure to check out the video that's linked above. I've come back to my size 3 brush, and I'm going to add a couple of leaves to complete my composition. We're almost done. I'm using that same blue color to paint a shadow on the outside of the coconut. This step is completely optional. You don't have to do this, but I've just felt like when you have freestanding illustrations like this, having a shadow really makes them stand out from the page. Make sure to deepen the shadow where the subject and the shadow meet. And now we're just in the final stages of the painting. So I've come back to my 00 brush and I'm just deepening some of the shadows. Just do a couple strokes at a time and then take a step back and look. Remember, less is more. And there you have it. Great job. And thank you so much for painting along with me. If you're on social media and you follow this tutorial, please tag me at audreyradesign and use the hashtag paintwithaudrey. I can't wait to see your work. Please make sure to subscribe to my channel, like this video, and let me know in the comments if you love coconuts and if you enjoyed this tutorial. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!